Test, test, test.
Test, test.
Okay, you're recording.
With that introduction from Brad, good evening.
It's so great to be here at the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living, where we work to transform our personal lives and help make the world a better place.
And this month, we are moving and swimming along with the theme, the global theme of all the centers for spiritual living, or many of them, with the topic of finances for the month of October. And this is a really interesting month and an interesting theme for me. And I'll be sharing a little bit about my story over the last several years and how it unfolded. But this week's topic is called Swimming in the Infinite Ocean. Right? You hear the story about, like the fish is in the ocean, but not realizing that they're in the ocean. We're here on this little planet Earth, and we are part of this vast, incredible, infinite universe. So we start our talk about abundance and prosperity and finances, right? The practical aspect of the flow of God's good that comes through us and goes out into the world, sort of following along the steps of a spiritual mind treatment. So those who are new to this teaching or not so new, we believe and practice affirmative prayer. And the first step of affirmative prayer is believing first and foremost, God, Spirit, Big Sweetie, it, whatever we want to call it, that it is, right? God is, that we are we are that infinite source, that we live in an abundant, expanding universe that extends beyond our human comprehension. And we're going to talk about contemplation. How do we begin to absorb that vastness of God? It's easy to say, God is all there is, right? But to actually begin to embrace it and to understand it and to feel it takes some steps of contemplation. And the next step of affirmative prayer is aligning with that understanding that there is an infinite abundance in the universe. I am, and we are. So during that part of this month's theme, we will talk about looking at our nature and how our nature, ourselves, interact with that infinite abundance, that perfect wholeness of God. Ernest Holmes, who wrote The Science of Mind and is the founder of this teaching, this movement, he said, God is spirit. Spirit is substance, and substance is supply. This is the keynote to a realization of the more abundant life, to the demonstration of success in financial matters. Believing first the allness, the wholeness of God, that spirit or God is substance, and that with that substance comes the supply that flows through us and is used to enhance and work with our lives in the world. So this week, we're going to look at how finances can be a source of immense joy and sometimes immense struggle. We begin with an awareness of the infinite source, as I said, that all flows, and then we'll follow that flow through the human experience, both personally for the individual and then out into the world. And we begin at that beginning, infinite source. When we look at the abundant nature of the universe, everywhere and always fully present, there is a sacredness of wealth. We expand our idea of how big really is. And we create in our world through contemplation. We can contemplate lack or limitation, stew, ruminate, crunch, or we can contemplate abundance and flow. The universe is so extravagant in its expression, isn't it? It's pure, abundant energy everywhere present. So let's contemplate a universal abundance. Let's practice being open about infinite presence. And I'll ask Brad to put a picture and share that with Gail. He's got it in a sec. While he's bringing that up, So this past weekend, Kim and my son Ben and I went to the Okie-Tex Star Party. And it happens every year. You may not know this, but one of the darkest spots in the United States is 7 hours straight west of here in Black Mesa State Park. So there are hundreds of amateur astrophotographers from around the world, in particular North America. There are people who drove in or flew in. And it's really interesting to be there because the world's flipped upside down there. During the day, it's sleepy and quiet and hot, and people are taking naps, trying to stay cool. Some people had campers. We were tent camping. It starts to change. Really, we just know what's coming. As the dusk settles, the light begins to set, and slowly the evening stars begin to come out. So Ben took this picture of the Andromeda galaxy through his telescope. It is our Milky Way, our largest galactic neighbor. So this universe, ever expanding. This is 2.5 million light years away. And you can go way beyond that to the outer edges of the universe. There's something about the beauty of this galaxy. So we're in the Milky Way galaxy, right? This is another galaxy that you can actually see with it, not a super fancy telescope. And Ben has figured out a way to take these images over an hour and then layer them on top to bring out its brilliance. And I love that he's figured it out.
And it's heading toward us to collide with us.
It may be, right? Yeah, Andromeda is. It is, yeah, heading this way.
I'm sorry to interrupt. How far away is that again?
2.5 million light years away.
And here's how far 1 light year is. 1 light year is 5.88 times 10 to the 12 miles. And that's one more time,
5 million light years away.
It's like a bazillion billion miles.
So if you can go to the next image, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is an astrophysicist, said, when I look up at the night sky and I know that, yes, we are a part of the universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is also in us. So the Milky Way, Dolores, you've got to see this picture. See what's in the front? This is a Honda Element in front of the Milky Way. Yes, it's my car. I told Ben I want that picture. The Milky Way contains about 300 billion stars. Its vast structure is roughly 100,000 light years in diameter. What's amazing is sitting there in a lawn chair, tilted way back, and just all of a sudden, like, the other thing is at the Okie-Tex Star Party, there's no light allowed. So our phones all have to be turned to red, and no cars can come in, because once our eyes begin, we can see much more when our eyes settle down. One look at a phone and you're messed up for an hour. So no lights are allowed in there. We figured out a trick to turn our phones red. Ben showed us that. But then to suddenly, like, you start to see the faint glimmers, and then suddenly, wow. The arc of the Milky Way going all the way over. I mean, and talk about meditation for hours on into the evening. Just amazing. And one of the things I said to Ben, I said, okay, well, all the stars out there, right? I didn't take too many science classes. I said, really, what are those? So they're basically suns. They're like our sun, right? So each of those stars is basically like a sun. Each of those suns can be, many of them are hosting planets in their orbit, right? We've come a long way from flat Earth, haven't we? So those sun-like stars in the Milky Way have planets orbiting them. And the universe is continuing to expand out beyond what we can see. So these are just telescopes on the Earth to be able to look out there, or just quietly sitting. Have you looked out in the night sky this past week? You can see Jupiter and you can see Saturn just by looking up. You can go to the next one. It's another Milky Way shot. So there are galaxies that we don't even know about yet because there isn't enough time for their light to travel to us yet from the Big Bang, which is even harder to explain. And an astrobiologist at Columbia University said, in a finite world, a cosmic perspective isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. When we sit here thinking about our worries, which are big to us at the moment, there is this creative universe that is expanding and expanding and expanding, and we have access to it. We can see the majesty and the beauty of this experience. So the divine mind, as I said, is the one and only reality, right? There's an infinite supply of ideas. It is true wealth, it's abundance. And these ideas, these potential energies that come with our ideas are available to everyone, everywhere, and always. You probably stop sharing so y'all can see. Spirit has no limitation, nor any concept of lack or restriction. It is impersonal. It don't care. It is. But we, people, have created ideas about God, the ideas of rules, of restrictions of love, of desire, of suffering and having to earn, and living in lack. Believing this to be more pleasing, you know, oh God, if I may be worthy, would you please, or, you know, I'm going to give. There are different ways to just align with that essence of source. If we're going to allow the infinite wealth and abundance of the universe to express from us, we have to have a healthy understanding of our relationship to the divine. Wealth in the dictionary simply means abundance, abundant supply, and it derives from the word wheel, W-E-L, which means a sound, healthy, or prosperous state. Wealth is a sound, healthy, or prosperous state. So wealth is not dependent on a big wad of cash, although maybe it helps, right? It begins with the state, the feeling of abundance. Can we conceive of an infinite oneness that wants itself and its creation to live in poverty, restriction, or lack? No, right? The infinite is unlimited, expressing freely. Wealth isn't things. First wealth of spirit is ideas, the medium for expressing what we call substance, the invisible real energy that underlies everything. Science tells us that space is not empty. Rather, it's filled with energy, both potential and in its particulate form. Charles Fillmore, who was the founder of the Unity movement, and we're here in the Unity Church today, he relates the experience of this energy seeming to fall like golden snowflakes all around him. I love that image, that the energy of spirit flowing is like golden snowflakes falling around us. Whatever idea or image we may relate to, we know that we are immersed in a substance of infinite abundance, of infinite wealth, and that we are within it, and it is within us. Thomas Trelward, who is one of the influencers of Ernest Holmes and his teaching, observes that the universe creates by contemplating itself. So we come in. In the science of mind, we say we become what we think about, what we focus on. The ancient metaphysical philosopher Plotinus, who we studied in ministerial school, says, I do not argue, I contemplate. And as I contemplate, I let fall the seeds of thought into the mirror of mind, which then becomes the mirror of matter. I love that. I don't argue. And I'm talking about not arguing with my neighbor. I'm talking about arguing with myself, right? I contemplate. I lean back on that chair in Black Mesa, Oklahoma, in one of the darkest skies in the country, and contemplate the majesty of life, the beauty of perfection. And I also can do it in my bed or on the couch or with my eyes closed. We're driving, maybe. And as I contemplate, I let fall the seeds of thought into the mirror of mind. What are you looking at? It's coming right back to you. And then that mirror moves into matter. What time is? As we contemplate the infinite nature of the one, that contemplation aligns us with the nature of the one. It lifts us out of our conditioned beliefs in lack, limitation, and struggle. Lifts us out of that into the truth of flow, ease, grace, and plenty. This is not arguing or fighting with ourselves or the world. This is simply turning our attention in contemplation of that higher truth. The contemplation in itself is creative. That quiet time of simply considering that the Andromeda galaxy may be moving towards us. It's far enough away to just contemplate on its brilliance and beauty. So this week, we can practice awareness. Notice the abundance of the universe. See its extravagant expression in things small and large. Feel the life energy expressing through and as nature, and recognize that that same nature abundance of life energy is expressing through and as you and me and you and you and you. Then practice contemplating the infinite wealth of that presence in your presence as that presence. We recognize the vastness of spirit and its extravagant expression of life. And we recognize the oneness with its nature. We stop seeing lack and limitation as the path of only good spiritual people. Charles Fillmore declared that it is a sin to be poor. By sin, he means missing the mark. When we hit the mark, the bullseye of the true nature of the infinite, we no longer believe in old ways and old fears of divine disapproval or reprisal. We step into that freeing awareness of an infinite presence, of thriving, extravagance, and the joy of full expression. We are that. So next week, I will share a little bit about a really tremendous shift in my relationship with abundance and flow. Teaser for next week. And the practical steps that allowed me to release tens of thousands of dollars of high interest debt. It was spiritual and divine, and it was practical. And it got me to take a good, hard look at shame around money. In January of 2019, I took a close and real look at my own personal finances. My financial house seemed to be in order from a distance. Maybe from Andromeda, it looked pretty good. All my bills were paid on time, and I was tithing. I was traveling with family and had a nice balance in my 401k. It's a little less right now, but that's okay. But there was a pit in my stomach because I knew that I was carrying that debt. I could feel it and paying interest every month, a lot. So I started to look at how much I spent month by month, at the inflows and the outflows. And guess what? Despite buying clothes at Goodwill and shopping at Trader Joe's, our outflows were more than our inflows. We spent a lot that year on travel and camps for kids, and they created family memories that I wouldn't trade in. But tacking on a few $100s of interest payments every month for things purchased in the past, paying today for things in the past, had me not feeling so good. So it is true that even ministers and practitioners, maybe far too many, can teach prosperity, but not actually practice it, not judging life. So for me, this was an opportunity for introspection. It was my connection to spirit, and spirit provided guidance for me to release that shame around money, and then to come up with a practical plan to make a difference. So fast forward to a few months ago. Would I have been able to make that career change that led me to a great new job with tremendous people, to then become the senior minister at the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living, because I have space and room in for my life?
to do deep spiritual practice and to be present with all of you? No.
I've been on that hamster wheel still, or I would have been in fear and lack to say, oh my gosh, I can't change jobs. I have all this debt to pay. I have the burden of debt. So anyway, I'll talk a little bit more about that next week, about how that process was both spiritual and practical. I treated and I moved my feet in and got into a place where it just came off. It was great. And the thing that we take into the next week, if anyone's contemplating issues about money, we start right where we are. And that's true of anything we learn in spiritual practice, anything we want to change in our lives. It can only start with the recognition that this is where I am right now, and feel it and fight it and love it and appreciate it and I'm grateful for it, to begin to move forward from that spot. So we can contemplate on that. Now, I got a couple questions as we wrap this up. We've been thinking today, right? We live in an infinite universe, and that infinite universe is God and beyond. That God is within us, it's right where we are, and that reflections of lack or limitation are, in theory, just as easy to accept as ideas of prosperity and abundance and flow and beauty. So some things to think about is, what was the idea of God's relationship to wealth that you grew up with? You know, what was God's relationship? How did the church have a relationship to wealth and abundance? Was it something acceptable? Was it something reserved for just a few? Or was it something that we're a part of? And what is it now? How has it changed? Where do you see the extravagant nature of the universe? Where do you see it? Right? Where do you feel it? Where do you sense that extravagant nature of the universe? And what do words like opulence and wealth bring up for you? Abundance, opulence, wealth. No gold toilet bowls. Although, you know what? Whatever floats your boat. Opulence, abundance, you know, all these beautiful things that come forward. So I love this topic this month for so many ways, because we all have an opportunity to recognize that we are a greater place for spirit to have its experience through us. And one great way to do that is to recognize that as we align with that gift, some people can just manifest like that. Others, most of us, have the opportunity to align with that, to give thanks for all the good or the not good in our lives, so we can move forward into this place of being a greater emanation for flow, and then listen for what Spirit has to say and take steps in that direction. So let's pray. Divine Spirit, infinite wisdom, source of all life that I call God. I know in this moment that there is an everywhere presence of that brilliance of God. It is in our Milky Way and beyond, which is a visual example, a wow, aha, that there is so much amazing abundance in this universe. And then I can see that with my eyes closed. It tells me that I'm one with the allness of God. And I speak this word of truth, knowing that each and every person hearing this prayer and beyond are also one with that brilliance, that beauty, that magnificence, and that wholeness. And I speak this word for those who may be living in lack or limitation, knowing that there is a compassion, a love, an embrace, and knowing that it's okay to bring that into the light. So we pray knowing that there is enough for all, a world full of abundance and free of limitation. We pray knowing that there is absolute kindness and wholeness, enough food and housing and shelter and love to go around for us all. And I know that to be the truth of this center today and always. And so it is that I give thanks for this word of prayer. I give thanks for this gift of the teaching of the science of mind that reminds me to align with the God is, I am, energy, and speak this word into the law of life, that impersonal aspect of God that does not care, it just responds. I let it rest right there in that spot. I let it go, I let it be, and ask you to affirm with me, and so it is. Amen.